Hey guys, it's Angela, and I'm back in the snow. If you saw my last video where I unhauled books in the snow, you're probably wondering why I'm back in the snow. After dropping books in the snow during that video and getting snow in my books and just it being an overall disaster, you're wondering, why are you doing it again? Because why the heck not? So today's video, I'm going to be telling you about all the books I read during the month of January whilst sitting in the snow, and I'm very excited to do that. So over the month of January, I read a total of 10 books. I had 6 4-star books and 4 5-star books. So overall, I'd say that it was a really great reading month. So let's get into it. So first, I'm going to start with my 4-star books. And the first one is The Ghost of the Shadow Market by Cassandra Clare and a bunch of other people. Now this is basically a bind up of a bunch of short stories that have to do with the characters in the Shadowhunter world, but Jem is the main focus of this. And I overall really enjoyed this. Like I said, I gave it 4 stars, and I would definitely recommend it if you're like a really big fan of Cassandra Clare. The next 4-star book is The Bromance Book Club by Lyssa Kay Adams. And this book is about a man named Gavin, and he plays professional baseball, and him and his wife are going through a really tough spot. Actually, she wants to get a divorce and she's kicked him out. So his friends decide to help him out, and they decide that they want to try to save his marriage by forming a book club. And basically, that book club consists of them reading romance books and taking what they've read from the books and him trying to apply it to his marriage to save his marriage. Overall, I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. The main character, Gavin, also has a stutter, which I liked being able to see that sort of representation in there. And yeah, it was super fun. And the next book comes out, I think, in March. So I'm definitely going to be picking that up. Next, we have The Beauty of Darkness by Mary E. Pearson. And this book is the 3rd book in the Remnant Chronicles trilogy. And I gave all 3 books 4 stars. So overall, I really enjoyed the series. And this book is about this girl named Leah who is betrothed to marry a prince. And on the day of her wedding, she decides that she doesn't want to be a political pawn in this whole thing that's going on. So she just leaves. And the story follows her as she runs away. And she's being pursued by 2 people. One is the prince, and the other is an assassin who was sent to kill her. But throughout the entirety of the first book, you don't know who's who. So it definitely has this sort of like mysterious intrigue that goes with it. And I really enjoyed it. This one was definitely a lot longer than the first 2. And I don't know if it needed to be necessarily this long in my opinion, but I still enjoyed it. Next up, The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. This is the last Riley Sager book that I haven't read yet, but now I have. And I gave it 4 stars. This follows our main character, Emma, who years ago went to this camp called Camp Nightingale. And she bunked with a bunch of girls, and one night after playing the classic game, 2 Truths and a Lie, the girls go missing. So the 3 older girls basically just shush Emma and then leave, and they're never seen from again. So then the story follows the past, but now the present. Because presently, Emma is still coping with that trauma, and she does so by painting the girls in pictures. And she's recently been asked to go back to Camp Nightingale because it's reopening, and she's been asked to be an art teacher there. So like I said, this story follows the past timeline leading up to that, but it also follows the present as she goes back to Camp Nightingale and just sort of gets hit with all those feelings again and finds out what exactly happened to her friends. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, this is my 3rd Riley Sager book. I haven't been let down by one of his books yet. And I'm so excited to read his next book, which comes out in June. Okay, we have 2 more 4-star books, but the lighting has like left. I filmed this after school, so it's about like 4:30 right now, and the sun's gonna go down soon. So we gotta chop. But the next book I have is Misery by Stephen King, which I also gave 4 stars. This follows our main character, Paul, who's an author, and he's written this series with this main character, Misery, and it's a really beloved, well-loved series. And then Paul gets into an accident, and this woman, Anne, takes him and brings him to her home, and she's his #1 fan. And She reads the Misery book and doesn't like the ending. And so basically Paul has to rewrite the book to stay alive because this woman is keeping him captive. And it was really good. I really enjoyed it and I gave it 4 stars. And the last 4-star book I have is The Long Walk by Stephen King. I was actually going to read this in February, but I ended up reading it in January instead, towards the end of January. And I buddy read this with Kat from Paperback Dreams. And overall, I'd say that our feelings sort of lined up to be the same. This book is it's a dystopian book. Some people have compared it to The Hunger Games, although I've never read The Hunger Games, so I really can't speak to that. But this book follows our main character, Garrity? Yeah, Garrity, who participates in this thing called the Long Walk. And the Long Walk is basically where they get 100 people and they have to basically walk to a destination. And they get 3 warnings. So the warnings are for like if you stop, sit down, basically if you do anything but walking. And 3 strikes and you're out. So once you get that 3rd warning, you're done. So the person who is the last walker, who is the last one standing, gets a really big prize. And this book was very interesting because it was interesting to see why certain people decided to join the Long Walk, because essentially if you don't win, you're going to die. So knowing that ahead of time, it was interesting to see why people would join in the first place. The idea of the Long Walk was very interesting to me. And this book discussed a lot of topics such as like morality and stuff, which I really enjoyed. But I will say I really didn't get attached to the characters. And I was listening to this on audio, and I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I just really didn't get attached to the characters. I kind of got confused with like who was who. So that sort of brought my enjoyment down as well. Also, this book at times was just honestly too much. If you've read Stephen King before, you know that there's times where he's just like sexual for no reason. But this was the horniest Stephen King book I've ever read. And to the point where it was just like unnecessary. Like you're focusing on staying alive right now. A girl's boobs should be the last of your concern when you literally could die. But that's just my opinion. Overall though, I did enjoy this and it was pretty short as well. So if you're new to Stephen King or if you're interested in picking up one of his books, I would recommend this. And now we're gonna go into the 4 5-star books. And I gotta say, I'm getting cold. My hands are getting really cold. So if you see me like shuffling back and forth, that's because I didn't want to wear gloves because I'm stupid. Anyway, into the 5-star books. Like I said, I had 4 5-star books and the first is Orange. Now, if you've been following my channel for a while, I actually picked up this book in June. I picked this up in June. And this is the 2nd volume in the Orange series. It's like two volumes. And this is about a group of friends who are in high school and their friend commits suicide. And then they're able to go back in time and sort of try to prevent that from happening. And I knew that this was going to be a hard book for me to read because suicide is something that I've dealt with personally with one of my best friends, and it's just a hard topic. So I started reading this in June, and then I got to the point where they were actually sort of like, it was like 50 pages from the end. They were actually like about to prevent him from committing suicide, and it was just too hard for me to read. I just kind of tapped out at that point. I put it down with the plan to pick it up later when I felt ready. And so during the month of January, I felt ready to finish the story, and I gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed the story overall. I have a long review on Goodreads. If you're interested, I'll have my Goodreads link down below. But I really did enjoy this manga, and I would recommend it, but of course, with the trigger warning of suicide. And the next 5-star book is Rules for Vanishing by Katie Alice Marshall. Now, I actually got this book at BookCon last year. I got an ARC of it, and I just never picked it up until now, and I don't know why, because it is so good. So this is a young adult horror, and it's told with like mixed media format. So sort of think of like those found footage movies such as The Blair Witch Project, As Above, So Below, like that sort of thing. But then also mixed media, so like interviews with people and pictures and stuff like that. And then you get this book. This book basically read like a horror movie. So the gist of this book is that it's about this girl, Sarah, and there's this road that like shows up, and she believes that her sister went missing on that road. And once the road like shows up, it like goes away. the book is kind of hard to explain. It's one of those things that you just sort of have to pick it up if you're interested, of course. But this road follows all these different like gates, and she believes that her sister Becca has gone on the road and now is basically stuck. So her and a bunch of friends go on the road to try to find her sister and save her and bring her back. And like I said, this was so good. It was such a fun read. It was such a quick read because I feel like the mixed media format made it just go by even faster. And overall, I really enjoyed it. And the next 5-star book is Thunderhead by Neal Shusterman. And this is the second book in the Arc of the Scythe trilogy. And this series follows a world where it's a utopian world, but when I think of utopian, it's kind of still dystopian. So death has been conquered, all diseases, nothing. No one can die naturally. They need to die by being gleaned or killed by a scythe. So the first book follows these two teenagers, Citra and Rowan, who want to enter the scythedom and become scythes. And it's just a really, really great book. I'm sure you've heard a lot about it here on BookTube. And I finally picked up the second book and loved it and gave it 5 stars. Finally, we've reached the end. The sun is literally on its way down. I can't feel my toes, but everything is fine. And the last 5-star book I have is A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kemner. Now, this isn't actually the copy that I read. I did read my ARC in the very beginning of January. It was the first book that I read for 2020 and for the decade, which I thought was perfect because I loved it so much. And this is the sequel to A Curse So Dark and Lonely, which, if you don't already know, is my favorite book and features Harper, who has cerebral palsy rep, and it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. And this book sort of takes a step away from that because you don't so much focus on Harper and Ren, but you focus on Gray. So if you read the first book and really liked him, well, surprise, he's in like most of this book. Like, it's very centered around him. And even though I missed my girl Harper because she wasn't in a majority of the book, I still loved it and really enjoyed it and gave it 5 stars. So those are all the books that I read during the month of January. I'm sorry that the lighting in this video has gone downhill, but I do hope that you have enjoyed this video and have enjoyed a successful video talking about books in the snow where I'm not dropping them. I just thought it'd be sort of fun to do because, you know, January, snow, whatever. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to let me know what books that you read during January that you really enjoyed, and as always, have a good one.